Oh man, you know, if it's Obsidian's goal to overwork me to death, it's working. Between the Outer Worlds DLC, Avowed, Grounded coming out this week, everything needs to be done in a timely manner, and I love it, and I hate it. Just let me breathe, Obsidian, but they're so close to taking me out. Salutations, everybody, it is Matty here, and today we're talking about Avowed, the newly announced AAA RPG coming from Obsidian Entertainment. It was revealed during the Xbox Game Showcase last week, and I thought the Xbox Game Showcase was pretty awesome when it came to actual announcements, but when it came to anything supplemental like gameplay, it was completely vacant, which leads to a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, and a lot of discussion. You're going to see a lot of that on the channel this week, but in particular today, we're getting into some Avowed leaks, some very juicy ones, some spicy ones. All the flavors are in this leak here because we got a lot to go over, but you may be wondering who did the leaking and how legitimate is it? Well, as always, take it with a grain of salt, right? It's not official information, but it's still something that I think we can lend some credibility to, given some of the sources that are supporting said leak. So, it comes from Sponger. Not that Sponger, no. This Sponger. The Sponger who's talking on ResetEra about, for example, In Exile, saying that they will be a premier Xbox Game Studios RPG powerhouse, that their next game won't be out after Wasteland 3 until 2024, and that their studio is going through the biggest transformation in the industry, to which a moderator on ResetEra had confirmed that Sponger would have access to this kind of information and that it is plausible. More interestingly, connected to what we're talking about today, Klobrille, a Xbox Game Studios insider who has an excellent track record, said in regards to the Avowed information, from everything I know, he is legit. So this doesn't mean he can't get anything wrong. It means so far he has proven reliable to our uses for information about Avowed and everything Xbox Game Studios. But really, we're going to be talking about what he posted on ResetEra. I'll have it linked in the description down below if you want to read it for yourself. We're splitting it up into little sections here because there's a lot of information via bullet points. I want to digest it properly and then discuss it all section by section. So let's get the reading. As I previously mentioned before the announcement, Obsidian is working on a Pillars game. As back then I did get confirmation the game contains spore-like creatures with few other vague descriptions of the living lands. So now I do have new information about Avowed. Starting it off, fully open world. I feel the trailer kind of sold that idea, so it was assumed by many. Much larger than Skyrim. Very differently larger. More proper word would be denser, which we've heard be used for the likes of Cyberpunk 2077. Primarily set in the Living Lands region of Eora, which is the universe for Pillars, for those who are unfamiliar with these terms. Big focus on world reactivity, lighting, and next-gen AI systems and physics. Special focus on physics with magic systems. Have no clue what that would mean. Perhaps some form of pushing and pulling of objects and real-time reactions. Real-time weather system. Don't have full details, but fog is very important as a real-time element. Rivers will have specific microphysics systems regarding this. Very advanced character creation tool. Didn't get more info. Mod support. For now, PC is/will be very dominant as a creation tool, but it will be fully playable on Xbox. Now, the character creation tool stuck out to me immediately because I just saw on the Avowed Reddit that there was an article highlighting some Obsidian job listings, and one of them mentioned specialties in first/third person. I feel like you wouldn't have a detailed character creator if you couldn't see your character. If it was like the Outer Worlds where you could only see it when you pause the game, I don't feel like they'd go all in depth on a character creator, because then you can't see them in action, you can't take out the camera and rotate it like you could in a Bethesda Game Studios game. So I do believe this aspect for sure. Fully open world, I think this was expected when Obsidian got their hands on a nice budget. Like I mentioned in my original video about Avowed, it's been since New Vegas that we've seen them really tackle an open world. KOTOR 2 and the Outer Worlds are a little bit more similar. They're both hub games, whereas we're going to see Obsidian take a crack finally at a AAA open world game, and I think that's super exciting. When it comes to world reactivity with the magic systems, I'm very keen to see that. I've never really fallen in love with a magic system in games. Like, I know that you can toy around a little bit in the Elder Scrolls, but I can't think of off the top of my head right now any fantasy style game with a magic system that I was like, I really like this. I feel this made the game better. It doesn't empower me as much as I really hope it does. So maybe playing around with physics and having the world react to the things you're doing, like if you use a fire spell, you could set trees on fire. Things like that, just as a simple example, I think would bring to life the magic that you're conjuring. Very large number of factions, but very different approach than with Skyrim. You'll be able to have companions different than the Outer Worlds. Story set, fight against incoming threat of tyranny, independent from previous stories. Game has bosses planned, and some of them are very, very large. Gods will have a special say in the game. Great focus on iconic landmarks, statues, and buildings. Now you're seeing the word Skyrim come up a lot here, and I think it's good to see where Obsidian's ambitions are. I mean, games still, to this day in 2020, try to imitate what Skyrim did, and that game came out in 2011. No matter how you feel about Bethesda Game Studios and where they stand with you, and I understand if they're in a negative light, it's really hard to argue that Skyrim didn't define a large amount of gamers and games that were made in the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation, as well as the power of modding and how it can keep your game relevant for years and years and years on end. So if Obsidian's trying to make their own Skyrim, not in the sense of exactly how Skyrim is, but defining the open world RPG genre like Skyrim did for so long and still in some way continues to do as a legendary game, I think this is great where they have their ambitions set. Boss fights were something I didn't expect to be mentioned at all. When it comes to these open world fantasy epics, I feel like boss fights are the last thing on our minds, at least for me personally. I'm always thinking about the conversations, the exploration, the rare weapons and armor, but to know there's going to be these gargantuan bosses possibly is really exciting, because that sounds like something different, especially if they're as large as this insider is saying. Now, they say the companions are coming back, but it's different than the Outer Worlds. I imagine when they say it's different than the Outer Worlds that you're not going to be traveling with a party. Like in the Outer Worlds, you always had yourself and then 2 others with you. I think in this game it might be you and 1 other companion traveling with you. And I wonder if there's going to be any online elements. We know with Game Pass that Xbox really wants to continue to usher in some form of online elements, some way for these games to continuously make money, to sustain relevance, so that Game Pass is constantly alluring outside of the third-party acquisitions that they're getting, because those third parties, much like Netflix, will kind of come in and go out eventually, whereas the Xbox first-party games are always going to be there. So it's just a thought off the top of my head, given the fact that they're mentioning companions on which ways they could handle it. And factions, man, like, that is really, to me, what I found was most defining about Skyrim. The Dark Brotherhood, the Thieves Guild, and the way that they functioned underground and how they impacted the world. To me, that's really what defined my Skyrim experience. Those stories that were told were more impactful than the main story. So to see that Obsidian may be gearing in and saying, let's take a look at factions, let's really decorate our world, which we saw with some of the art pieces, that there are many different types of armor, so obviously there's going to be different types of factions already. We can sort of see that, but to what extent, right? Are they going to be different armies posted around the world vying for control somewhere? Or is it going to be, like I mentioned earlier with Skyrim, where you have a Thieves Guild, you have the Mages Guild, you have a Fighters Guild, like you have these respective guilds. I wonder how that approach will be. The last section reads, 2 large cities planned with many smaller ones, with strong focus on contrasting wild areas, rivers, mountains, and desolated areas. Yes, you'll be able to swim, thank God. Fully respecting PoE creatures lore with new additions. Dynamic presentation of dialogue. For now, idea is to keep the you can kill everyone in the game option. Around 100 people are on the project for 2 years. Full production is already a thing. Team will still grow, which is to be expected with a AAA project, especially as they get down the stretch. Target date is late 2022, early 2023. Keep in mind that some parts of this can change during the development process. So I've seen a lot with Pillars of Eternity being mentioned in this write-up, respecting the lore, and in the beginning we saw how they said that they're going to kind of keep the story independent from the others. I think this is smart. As much as a lot of people love Pillars, and I'm very interested in it, and I'm going to be playing both Pillars games to prepare for Avowed, I still do look at them and go, these games aren't as popular as what Avowed can be. If they wanted to make Avowed directly, blatantly connected to the Pillars universe, they would have called it, say, Pillars or Eternity, something along those lines to see that direct connection. But Avowed clearly wants to be its own thing, inspired by something else that is established. And I'm sure Obsidian's identified the potential of saying, hey, if Avowed is really cool, then we had this history here with Pillars and what Avowed was at first for young gamers coming in. Like, I remember when I was younger and I was first discovering Fallout, I started with Fallout 3, and when I saw Fallout 1 and 2, I was like, what are these games? These aren't Fallout. So I wonder if it'll create a similar idea here with Pillars versus what Avowed is. I think that prospect is really cool. I doubt it's totally intentional, but I think Obsidian recognizes that one can be way more popular, way more marketable than another. The dynamic presentation of dialogue worries me because we had a little bit of that in Fallout 4, and if it's going to be dynamic, is it going to load up a whole text box like we're familiar with when it came to the Outer Worlds or the older Fallout games, or is it going to be the button mapping like we saw in, say, Fallout 4? And when I see that, even in like Dragon Age Inquisition, which I've been playing a little bit, that dialogue wheel, and you have those 4 options, it's always so concerning because in a lot of ways it's inherently limiting if you're trying to dissect every response or thing someone's saying to you into 4 different answers. I just always worry about that with these games getting bigger from Obsidian, that they'll lose a sense of self. We haven't, thank God, seen anything so far reported by insiders that there's going to be like a voice protagonist. I think that would be really detrimental to the game, and I really hope that they keep it silent so that you can account for the choice and consequence without having to have everything voiced. It saves them an infinite amount of time and money if they could just let the world react to what you're doing and allow you to insert yourself into your character's shoes. I feel like they're very aware of that with how they approach the development of the Outer Worlds, but this is a whole different beast with an entirely different budget. They say that development started about 2 years ago, which is what I reported in my original video on Avowed, and also that the target date is late 2022. That is what I had personally speculated given the development cycle typically for these types of games and the acquisition date of Microsoft acquiring Obsidian Entertainment. So to me, that's not a totally big surprise. I do think we could still expect that late 2022 release date because we do have Peril on Gorgon coming now, and then we have one more Outer Worlds DLC. I think once that's out, we have full steam ahead for Obsidian. All hands on deck, get everyone onto Avowed, and by then we may start to see more in the terms of gameplay trailers. But if it is coming in, say, 2022, I do wonder why they revealed it now, unless it was for marketing purposes, hiring purposes, so they have a vision out there for people to see and go, I want to work on that and apply to Obsidian. Maybe they just wanted to give their fans an idea of what they're doing, similar to what Bethesda did with their roadmap between Fallout 76, Starfield, The Elder Scrolls 6. Just give them a bit of a roadmap. I think as a consumer, it's incredibly helpful. But I do have to wonder if it's so far out, why not wait till, say, next year and then put a 2022 date on it and then gradually spit out info afterwards. It's just my 2 cents on it. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of information here from this insider. Really exciting stuff. Hopefully it is all accurate because I like everything I've read here. It seems like it's welcoming to newcomers, retains a lot of the hardcore elements, that it's ambitious, it has their mind in the right place. So I'm excited and I'd love to hear from you now. Fire away in the comments down below. What do you think of what I've just reported to you about Avowed? I'll have the information linked in the description down below if you want to lay your own eyes on it entirely. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to all the patrons who continue to push the limits of this channel. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.